India goes for an AI compute portal. The Indian government is set to launch a India AI Compute Portal, allowing key stakeholders, that's ministries and state governments, to request compute capacity through the platform. As part of this initiative, India AI Compute Pillar has issued a memo to all union ministries, department, and chief secretaries detailing subsidized rates for compute capacity, network, and storage devices according to the business standard. And this is expected to cover approximately 40% of computing costs for eligible users, according to a Hindustan Times report. And that portal will come in about 7 to 8 days, the minister told Money Control. The India AI Mission is likely to provide shared computing resource through about 14,000 graphic processing units, following the selection of 10 companies that submitted the lowest bids, according to that same Hindustan Times report. Of these, 14,000 GPUs are reportedly available through companies like Yotta Data, E2E Networks, Tata Communications, AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, and about 14,000 are said to be procured with companies like Jio Platforms and CtrlS Data Centers. About 70% of these GPUs are said to be high-end models like the Nvidia H100, while the remaining 30% consist of lower capacity or older generation. The drive to acquire new GPUs is likely aimed at equipping researchers and startups with the necessary computing power to build foundational AI models, which serve as the core of AI-powered chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini, according to Business Standard. So, what do 14,000 GPUs mean, and what does a GPU mean? Just to get our basics sorted out again. I reached out to Jaspreet Bindra, founder of AI and Beyond and the Tech Whisperer UK, and also an AI consultant to enterprises, and began by asking him to define a GPU.
We just keep on reading GPU, and we just assume GPU is this one thing. So look, many of us would have heard of CPUs, central processing unit, right? A CPU is what we use for our computers, for our computing power. And we usually, if you remember, when we used to have desktop computers, there was a screen and there was a CPU. So most of the computing, which is simple computing, like what you need to do on a computer, or sequential computing, you could do and still can do with the CPU. And Intel, AMD, etc., were great at making CPUs. And then, gaming happened. And when gaming happened, the computing powers which were needed were much more than the typical kind of Word document, Excel stuff, etc. And so a new kind of processing unit started getting made, which, to put it very simply, could perform many operations in parallel rather than sequentially. And therefore, with the same amount of hardware, could do much more compute work. And Nvidia was amongst the first of the few people who started building these GPUs. They weren't called GPUs then. They were only called GPUs later. And a GPU is great for gaming. But people discovered that a GPU, and with its compute prowess, could be used for other things also, which required brute computing power. And so, a lot of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining moved to GPUs. Then Nvidia discovered that it could work brilliantly for AI also, because AI requires far more tasks of a computer than a CPU does. And so a GPU is really a new kind of CPU, which is much more powerful and processes stuff parallelly rather than sequentially, put it very simply.
And when we talk about 14,000 GPUs here, what does this mean in terms of computing power, and what can it be used for, and who could use it?
Well, there are GPUs and there are GPUs. Many people make GPUs, but NVIDIA is the king of the hill. And it has got two things which kind of separate it from the rest. It makes GPUs which are far, far more powerful, using extremely small chips which TSMC makes. These GPUs can handle billions of what are called floating point calculation every second. Number two, it also manages the entire software around it, which is called CUDA. And that's kind of proprietary. It's like having a Windows for your CPU. And so given this, NVIDIA GPUs, especially the latest ones, which are, I think, the H100, are like the Rolls Royce of GPUs. Each one costs $40,000, $50,000. And the 14,000 GPUs that India has got now, a few of them are H100s, and a few of them are slightly the older version which incidentally DeepSeek used to make its model. And what this means is that now we've got a bank of computing power, or compute as it's called, for all our startups and labs and government research institutions, etc., to kind of use, and something which was not available in India until now.
Right. And how could this then work? So if the government is announcing this as a destination, and the compute seems to belong, as one can see with many private organizations, So, what is this model going forward, or how could it be, and are there similar models elsewhere?
So I have written a lot about this. I'm not, if I may say, very confident about this model. Okay. Actually, when I said that this wasn't available in India right now, I was being a little economical with the truth. So one way to do this is what the government is doing, which is creating this bank of GPUs, which it has kind of imported at presumably lower costs, and is going to subsidize and give this off to all these different startups, etc., which would use it. The other is that most times when you want GPU capacity, you can actually rent it from the cloud. Okay, so all the Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, etc., and many others are now literally AI clouds, and you can actually go and rent GPU capacity in terms of how much you want, less, etc. I sometimes think that the cloud model could have been better. Okay, because it's already available, it's in India. Most of these clouds already exist in data centers in India, and you can take what you want, not take what you want. Could have struck a great deal with one or couple of these guys. Most importantly, look, a new GPU, Nvidia creates a rhythm where a new next version GPU, next generation GPU comes out literally every year. So by this time next year or even earlier, the H100s are going to be obsolete in some sense, while the clouds will always be updated, right? And so that could have been probably a better strategy. How all of this gets administered, you know, I still need to see the portal, frankly.
Right. And I'm assuming that there are some cost issues as well. So when you go for the top end computing capability or space on AWS, on Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, then you're paying maybe much more and maybe in dollars, and maybe it's the other way around when you're doing it domestically. So in general, do you see that as a way forward? As in, will we be able to access high quality compute capacity and capability wherever we want?
Well, it's not only cost, it's also sheer availability. There's more demand than supply for these NVIDIA GPUs. Even the big guys like the Microsofts and Googles of the world are not able to get what they want. In fact, their quarterly results, they've said that the results are lower than expected because they could not fulfill the capacity because they didn't have the compute power. OpenAI is moving away from Microsoft a little bit because it wants compute power. So it's not just cost, it's accessibility. Two things. One is that frankly, while we have these 13, 14,000 GPUs, if I was to take just one company, Meta, for example, it has close to 1 million GPUs, 600,000 to 1 million GPUs. So the capacity is still, for a country like India, still very small. In terms of cost, the way it is offered at a lower cost to the end customers and users, say startups, etc., is that the government is going to actually subsidize the cost. The subsidy could have also been done in a cloud, frankly. And honestly, the people benefit. If you look at Yotta, which has got the maximum amount in this whole GPU pie, Yotta is nothing but Yotta Microsoft Azure. AWS is with 5 other vendors. So it's really the same guys, okay, just through a different channel.
Right, Jaspreet. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.